Hello all, the Irrational Skeptic here, and today I'm going to be continuing the MBTI Types in College series. Um, so to get right into it, we're going to be doing the INFP in college, aka the Healer. The Healer is a very peculiar type because they, tender souls that go very deep into the realm of human emotion, and their perspective on life is directed towards the insides, the introverted nature. So imagine you feel something today. You feel sad, or you do something bad and you feel regret or shame. The INFPs, the way they're viewing this is a little bit different. They're watching the process itself. That's what all introverted functions do, is that they identify more with the process itself, the change, the internal mechanisms. So you can imagine how deeply these types feel, and they have introverted feeling, and which is a point I usually like to make because people like to say INFJs can feel other people's emotions, whereas it's actually the closer person to feeling other people's emotions usually will have introverted feeling in a more conscious part of their cognitive stack. So let's go into the functions of the INFP. They have introverted feeling as a dominant, extroverted intuition as a auxiliary, introverted sensing as the tertiary, and extroverted thinking as their last function. Uh, in comparison to the INFJ, who has introverted intuition as a dominant function, extroverted feeling as an auxiliary function, introverted thinking as a tertiary, and introverted sensing as an inferior function. So we see that the INFJ has extroverted feeling and the INFP has introverted feeling. The introverted feelers are more in tune, not just with their emotions, but the emotions of others as well. Um, and this is due to the fact that we're all humans, right? So the process of emoting is similar. It's across cultures, you go anywhere, they have the same kind of emotional expression: happy, laughing, crying, sad, anger, lust, jealousy. They're everywhere. It doesn't just apply to any group of people. So you can see why the introverted feeler is more, can peer into this aspect of life more accurately than the extroverted feeler. Um, because the extroverted feeler is basically responding to stimulus outside based on some rules that are supposed to provide harmony in the environment. So, uh, an INFP is a type in college that you'll have to do some searching to find. Now, if I were an INFP, where would I hide? If I live in the dorms, I would probably be in my room for most of the day, reading books or creating art if I was a more creative person. All the while trying to imagine how we got to this stage in society and how to improve our well being and our moral standards. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is all they do and they're always just sitting down thinking about these things, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that's not what they do. I'll explain. So the types are always acting in society for a certain collective goal, that lays in the collective unconscious. So whether or not you're aware of you consciously doing these imaginations or simulations of society in your mind, it's the types are doing it. Your type is doing it all the time. And at every given opportunity, will try to express aspect or try to express the function in the environment. So it's a self-contained system in a way. So even though this type has a strong belief of individualism, they still believe people ought to do the right thing. You see, unlike the FE users, extroverted feeling, who try to gain a harmonious environment by copying the dominant feeling climate, as I'll call it, the FI users don't believe in conformity just for the sake of it. At the same time, they believe people ought to act morally right, meaning they believe people should be free to choose what kind of emotions they display and what kind of, how they act in society. But at the same time, they expect people to choose to do the right thing. That's their own best case scenario is people consciously choosing right is better than forcing people to conform to a certain behavior, which is more extroverted feeling, if you see where I'm going with this. So in college, if there happens to be marches and protests to change some law in the state or policy in the school, I wouldn't be surprised to find them there supporting because they would have done their calculations. And sometimes people think it's funny to hear the word calculations in relation to feeling, but this is all going up in the mind. This is a cognitive process. You see, as humans in general, our latest developed part that gives us access to think the way we do is our neocortex. And if you do some research, you'll find that almost all our behaviors are contained in the neocortex, meaning that even old archaic systems that we have in our body, still in our brain, some old behaviors, these have a limit placed on them by the neocortex, and in most cases, the neocortex takes over those processes. So, as you can see, it's all think at a certain point, it's all thinking, it's all thought, it's all intelligence. Um, that's where the feeling, sensation, those things start to break down once you get to the level of brains and patterns, you see. So, in an event like protests, they can become very animated due to their extroverted intuition, which allows them to come out of their shell, but in a unique way. This is also related to why they may go into the arts. The position of their extroverted intuition helps them fit in while still being able to color a little bit outside of the lines. Well, because they have the moral high ground. And so they'll get a pass for quote unquote misbehaving because they're showing a deeper point. So let's say creating a piece of art that showcases the juxtaposition of all the suffering in the world with all its happiness. Uh, this kind of thought will, or this kind of expression of art will likely touch people very deep in their souls because, because everyone knows this too. It's just there's things we pay attention to and things we don't pay attention to. So once the introverted feeler starts showing this side of the world where, hey, how do you just go about your daily activities when you know that there's a kid somewhere that can't even, eat? So, although these people or these effects on people don't last too long, you know? So you can see a great piece of art that moves people, but then you can find the next day everyone goes back to their regular schmegular patterns of being horrible or good or whatever you want to call it, human beings. Um, so people tend to forget quickly. People tend to move on to the next thing, and maybe it's in relation to the current society that we're living in. Because I'm speaking from the perspective of living in the 21st century, where information is constantly flowing. So that might have something to do with it. But even though in the past there were still these kind of patterns showing themselves, um, and the aspect of people forgetting and moving on is it's still it's still basically true. So for this reason, the INFP participates only tangentially to society. They immerse themselves in areas where they can be of most direct benefit to those whom suffer the most in the world. They ask, why am I trying to be so successful when there's a child that all he wants is a cup of water? Or he wants to learn how to read and write, which are things that they're very capable of um, teaching to these children, and on their own terms, because these kids don't have anything and they want to learn and they want to grow. Well, yeah, I'm sure you get the point. So when someone is able to think to these, when you find someone that is able to think to these depths of human consciousness, you know that you're talking to an INFP. Their introverted sensing will make them be pretty on schedule. So at school, they will likely always make it to class on time, sit at the same desk, copy notes in the same manner. They always look withdrawn, but usually with a neutral look on their faces, not happy, not sad, just looking. Their inferior extroverted thinking will show mostly in times of frustration. So when you see an individual sitting and complaining about how the world is unfair, how they see that their efforts are not necessarily taking them anywhere, and that their only solution is to criticize the whole system. Humans are just selfish. All they want is power. I wish I could extinguish the world to rid of all the evil in the universe. Ta-da. That is a flip from their introverted feeling all the way down to the extroverted thinking. This is basically an explosion. Imagine you're blowing a balloon, it's going so well and making a round, oval shaped mass, and you just pop a needle in it. All the air quickly rushes out through the hole that has been created. That is extroverted thinking for them. So they will, and it'll mostly manifest negatively. And I'm using negatively in this sense to mean that it in a way that is, it doesn't look articulated. It looks like it's just pent up frustration bursting out. That is extroverted thinking exploding. And I guess these are ways that you normally use to identify types. In either case, is you look for their inferior, and that will give you information to what their dominant is, and then you have two functions in the middle that you play with to find out what type they really are. So that's just a neat trick that you could use as well. But yeah, that's kind of all I had to say on the INFPs in college. Really cool people. I've had INFP friends in college. They have very good conversations, intellectuals, um, and yeah, that's it. Until my next video, I think I will likely be continuing the Naruto series. I'm still on Team Guy, I believe. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you think. INFPs in college, do you agree? Do you disagree? Yeah, let me know. Anyways, the Irrational Skeptic signing off.